Good morning, everybody. So, welcome, as we are supposed to welcome each other and we are supposed to be welcomed. Um, in mainstream churches, this text, I think, is taken very seriously, and I think we are one of them. We appoint a person to stand at the door to welcome people when they come. It's a good feeling to be welcomed. To when you enter somewhere, you're not just another random person there, but somebody actually cares, or maybe sometimes at least pretends to care that you came. So we have, if you go to all these big churches and not really all, most of the Christian churches, you'll have somebody there to welcome you, to be at the door, to make sure that you know that they want you there. And I also, when I do the training on Zoom, I actually make sure that I appoint one person that is a welcomer. So when you come into this space where there are just like windows and the screen in front of you, there's one person responsible every day when everybody's logging in to say hello, how are you, how was your week? So it's not just kind of dull and just getting in there and waiting. So welcoming, being welcomed is it's a good feeling, and it's important. And I think the St. John's, out of many churches that I went to, is doing seriously a good job. Not just because we also always have somebody at the door, but because when you sit in a church, you get a smile. When you are done, you're welcome to coffee hour, and when you're there, somebody talks to you. And I want to affirm that, because I think it is important. It is important to be a place where people do feel welcome. And I think when we do that, people feel maybe sooner like they belong to, like they have the ownership of the place. Being welcomed is crucial, to have a feeling like you want to stay somewhere, like you want to be part of something. What it means when I feel welcome, when I come to a new place, as I said, I like to know that people want me there, and I want to hear, see if it's speaking for all of you. When I come to a new place, it's a feeling if I'm going to belong, if I'm going to fit in. I have this special feeling when I go back home. Am I going to feel still welcome in my small town, in my church where I used to go? If I meet my friends, am I going to belong still? And I feel welcome here on Sunday mornings. It's amazing to be back with all of you every Sunday. I can't even imagine, and feeling welcome. It's a feeling of acceptance, of peace, as opposed to when you come somewhere where you don't think people want you there. What is the opposite feeling? What it feels like to be an outsider, to be marginalized, to be put on the margins, on the border, behind that main space where everybody wants to be, but they don't want you there. The text today that we have is about people welcoming those who go out with the gospel. Jesus says, well, welcomes you. He says it to disciples, but he says it to his people, and we are his people. In Lutheran Church, I don't know if you've known that, but we have this idea of general priesthood, meaning each one of us is responsible for spreading the gospel of the Lord. Each one of us is responsible to educate ourselves and teach others and have the ability to teach. In the Lutheran Church, we don't rely only on clergy. We don't rely only on those who maybe are appointed. We are called to be responsible, to take ownership of the gospel, to take ownership of our faith and go out and tell others. And when we do that, Jesus says that when we go, whoever welcomes you welcomes me, and who welcomes me welcomes the one that sent me. So he's talking about how we are going to be perceived, not only as welcomers, but those who are to be welcomed. And we do that when we actually decide to be God's children in the world. Sometimes it's just really to go undercover about our day and not to be noticed. Because once we decide to be the God's child, to decide to speak the truth, to stand up for the truth, to tell about God's love, to tell about our faith, then we become disciples. Then we become those who are at the mercy of being welcomed or rejected. And the question is then, sometimes I think the fear of making that ownership and going to the world and be the disciples is that we never know if we're going to get a cup of cold water or the vinegar. Are we going to be accepted and we're going to have a good feeling, or are we going to be rejected and maybe scared? So this is the part where Jesus is talking about what it means when we go out and we may be welcomed or not. But then he continues and he tells us that we are supposed to welcome, we are supposed to be welcomers as well, because there will be people who will be in our presence that will need to be welcomed. So I was thinking about this image of Jesus' time, when somebody comes and even in Abraham's time and later Jesus' time, and this idea of people traveling and knocking on your door and walking into your house, washing their feet and accepting dinner from you. Just imagine that today. Even when I look some movies from just a couple 100 years ago, again, somebody would knock on the door and get that service. We don't do that anymore. We have hotels, we have motels, people don't just knock on random people's door. I think the result would be really a 911 and really a scared feeling. And so we let only people in our houses today based on invitation and people that we know, that we have a previous relationship. And if it's somebody new, we make very sure that we're going to be safe. And then it's not random. We don't even tell. When I grew up, and we would tell my mother's sister, we were going to visit you on Sunday afternoon. If somebody told me that today, I would freak out. No, I need to know, are you coming at 2 or 2:30? And don't show up at 2:15 when you say 2:30. So we're in a very different culture when it comes to welcoming people and what it means. So I was thinking, what are we doing today? What does it mean today to give a cup of cold water, to welcome one of these lands? How do we welcome people today? And I was thinking about connections that we form, the welcoming nature of mine, of your personality, and then of introverts and extroverts, and what is easier for which group of people. But it doesn't have to be a big going out. I was thinking about connections, about what it looks like today when we walk on the street, when we maybe go to a grocery store and we have masks, and the smiles that we maybe had before kind of get lost. We don't see faces, so we only rely on eyes. But welcoming, I think when I think about things today and who we are as believers, as Christians, as God's people, and we are asked to welcome, it's really about making connections with people wherever we are, with these little ones, with strangers, maybe responding kindly to somebody in the grocery store. And sometimes when you go out and somebody starts talking to you, and all of a sudden you realize you're in conversation with somebody for 5-10 minutes, and you walk away with this good feeling of feeling connected to somebody new and saying, like, that was a nice person. So I think that's the thing that we can do today, that we can go out as God's children and extend the welcome, extend the invitation into connection, maybe for 5 minutes, maybe for longer, but making somebody feel welcome in random places. And I also hope I don't have to mention that we need to do the same to people who are different than we are. People maybe who have different religious beliefs, maybe people who have different skin color, maybe people who have different, and it's a different, really difficult, different political views. Because we are kind of in a place today where we are almost forced to choose whom we welcome. We are forced to choose whom we support. We are forced to choose where we stand. And I think we neglect to see the God's creation, in every person. And if we're challenged with that, we are challenged with that, and then we are challenged to stand on the truth, and we are challenged to be welcoming to these little ones. So I will leave this up to you. I can't tell you whom to welcome, but when you go out and you are God's child, I think that's the way to go, to form connections, to feel connected to another random person, to show the kindness, to show them that we are on their side, that we feel with them. And then there is this interesting thing that is throughout this text, and it mentions reward a few times, that we will get reward when we do that. People doesn't often, promise that. It just asks to go and just sacrifice. And we had so many texts when we were just asking, go out there and just do it. But there is a reward mentioned today a few times. The reward of prophet, the reward of a righteous person. And then I tell you, none of these will lose their reward. What is the reward? Well, yeah, I mean, of course, we'll die, we'll go to heaven, eternal life and all that. That's a given, right? I mean, I hope. But what other reward is there? My experience is that that's the feeling we get when we extend maybe $1 or $5 to somebody who needs it. I think it's really difficult to be altruistic in our makeup as human beings because we like to feel good about things that we do. But I think the reward is really the internal, emotional, and spiritual connection that we get. If I decide to engage in a conversation with a stranger, if I decide to share part of my life and offer my vulnerability, or even just to people that I already know, to friends. If I decide to go there and open up and be welcoming, the reward is instant. The reward is there in friendship, in gaining people that love us, that we love. The reward is feeling God, feeling this spiritual connection through relationships with other people. When we open up, when we decide to offer our vulnerability that can meet vulnerability of another human being, when we are welcoming, when we are accepting, and in my experience, that is really a lot, to feel that I gained a friend, that I gained or connected to somebody else out there. And I think each one of us has to identify a reward, why we're going to do that, what it means for you to welcome others. What do you get in return? And is it worth it? I hope it is. Amen.